We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Mappy,
Here.
Councilmember Bolin,
Here.
Councilmember Mwambwe,
Here.
Councilmember Emig,
Present.
Councilmember Painter,
Here.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Here.
Councilmember Black, Councilmember Crable,
Here.
Councilmember Bray, here, Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. At this point, we move to public comment. And again, just to clarify for everyone, you have up to 3 minutes. Our policy is not to respond, but if you do want to have give and take, or you want maybe problem solved in real time, we do have a mayor's open house prior to a regular council meeting, which of course we had last Friday from 4:30 to 5:30, and we sit around the fishbowl, and you're welcome to talk about anything on the agenda or not on the agenda. So I just want to let you know, if you want interaction, that's the best way. This is essentially a one-way communication. And I'm going to go ahead and read these because there are quite a few. We're going to start the time at 6:02. We have up to 30 minutes, and no more than 3 minutes, though, per person. Karen Bays, Shirley Sapp, and Scott Steinley. If you would start with Karen Bays, if we could start with Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Hello. I just wanted to let you know I did email everybody today. I don't know if they were able to see those, but basically that's what I wanted to touch on, was the fact that they had brought forward all this, that there was a need in our neighborhood, and there really isn't a need in our neighborhood for the alcohol. And they said they wouldn't open the store if they couldn't have the alcohol. So that raises concerns for me. There then goes back to, it is about the liquor. It's nothing more than that. So we don't want that there. And as far as the food goes, we found out that there's many concessions over at the park. So they talked about being part of the park and driving more people to the park. Well, one thing, alcohol's not allowed at the park. And all the things there, the park closes at 10. They want to close at 11. Well, actually later, but that's what they imposed on them. I just really, again, don't feel that this would be a good thing going forward for our neighborhood. And I do believe that it all comes down to the alcohol. So I wish that you would consider that going forward with this. Also, the fact that the hotspot was successful. He said for 7 years that he had that. Why did he sell it if it was so lucrative? And now he's going to a venture that possibly won't be. And with the liquor thing, it says a need. We have plenty of need in our neighborhood now where you can buy packaged alcohol as well as just alcohol in general. So there really is no need. And we're not in a food desert. There's places to get food as well. So I just don't think this is a good venture and fit for our neighborhood. And if you thought about it, you'd have to ask yourself, do you want this in your neighborhood? You really have to ask yourself that. Do you want this in my neighborhood? Because we don't want it in ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Shirlene Sapp, Scott Steinley, and David Bird.
Hi, good evening. It's been said several times that everyone has been in favor of the convenience store that is wanting to go in. So I'm kind of asking and talking to some of the other neighbors and wondering if we can't just put the convenience store in for like a 6-month period, give it a trial period, see how that goes, build the reputation of that building into something more than what it has been. So instead of opening it up with liquor, open it up with everything that they want to. Open it up with the ice cream, open it up with the outdoor seating, and build that reputation back up. And then once that's all built up, then add the alcohol, or seeing 6 months or so down the road, seeing how that goes. But the reputation that the building has right now is not, it's going to be the same when you bring that alcohol back in. So they mentioned, which we didn't know last time, the outdoor seating with ice cream, and I think that would be a great thing. The next thing I'm asking is that if you do approve the alcohol, if the 800 block of Elm Street, we'd like to see that road blocked off from the entrance to the liquor store, so then that way we don't have all the traffic trying to go down onto the dead end and have all the stuff that's been there before. And then that the still is the consideration of none of the single alcohol sales. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Scott Steinley, and then David Byrd and James Bays.
Scott Steinling. My concern is regarding this Bloomington wanting to be a welcoming city or a sanctuary city, either one. I know people that came from outside the country. They went through the naturalization process. Nobody gave them their citizenship. I know that may be a popular thing, but that is not the right way to do it. I thought this was a country of laws, not a country of feelings. The other thing, we've got a problem with the roads in this town. The storm inlets, they say they're going to raise those when they relay the roads. They're going to relay the roads when they reset the inlets. That's a coward's way out. Make up your mind. You're going to do one or the other. The taxes in this town have gone to, the higher the taxes go, the higher you like it, and the more you raise them. I've seen the motor fuel tax created in 2015, then they doubled it in 2019. The state's gone up, the federal's gone up. Everybody is what's in it for me. Why don't we merge Bloomington and Normal and be done with it? We've got the Bloomington Normal public transit system, the Bloomington Normal Airport Authority, but the city of Bloomington, town of Normal. Uptown Normal, downtown Bloomington. But I know that would step on somebody's toes. The fact that we are absolutely, positively have these city-sponsored fireworks, that's absolutely unbelievable, Terry. Take that money and put it right in the roads. But I know that makes too much sense, and it would step on somebody's toes. We don't need them. You are telling the people, hey, don't do it. It's against the law. But the city's doing it. The city's not setting a very good example, are they? Maybe that's the way you run your political science class. That's not the way we run the city of Bloomington.
Okay, David Byrd, James Bays, and Ajit Sarash, excuse me.
Good evening. My name is David Byrd. I've been an Illinois State Police Officer for the past 30 years. I currently hold the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, and my specific job title is Assistant Deputy Director assigned to the Director's Office. I'm here to address the mishandling of my notice of application for the open Chief of Police vacancy in the city of Bloomington. The timeline is as follows. On June 20th, I submitted my application for the vacant Chief of Police position for the city of Bloomington. The deadline for submission was July 7, 2019. On the same day at 1:42 p.m., I received a confirmation email from Nicole Alberson thanking me for my application. On July 15th, I made an inquiry regarding the status of my application. I learned that my application never made it to the review process. I was immediately alarmed by this because I knew my application had been sent in prior to the July 7th deadline. And I had also received a confirmation email from the Director of Human Resources. I was told that an inquiry would be made into my missing application. On July 17th at 9:43 a.m., I received an email from Director Alberson and was advised that I would receive a call from the city manager. On July 18th, I received a phone call from the city manager, Mr. Gleason, and Ms. Alberson regarding my application. He immediately stated I know you will want to chew my head off about this, and admitted that there was a mistake by HR and that my application never made it to the review process with the review committee with the other applicants. He then asked me if I had a BA degree, as required. I immediately interrupted him and corrected him per the qualification listed on the original vacancy announcement that a BA was preferred, not required. He further stated that the process was not complete and I may be considered if the 8 applicants selected did not meet the approval of the selection committee. I took that as a condescending comment, and I did not appreciate being patronized after knowing that HR made a mistake and was not willing to correct it. Ms. Albertson asked me personally to accept her apology. And what kind of person would I be if I didn't do that? I accepted her apology. She's a human being and made a mistake. The sad part is that knowing she made this mistake, and she still didn't take the corrective means. That is the most hurtful thing about this situation. In closing, I'm a 30-year professional police officer with the Illinois State Police, which in my opinion is one of the best law enforcement agencies in the country. I have overseen numerous critical incidents in the city of Chicago, several that have made not just local, but national news. My integrity and moral values are of the highest standards, and my work ethic is beyond reproach. I just recently interviewed for the chief position in the city of Evanston, where I was identified as one of the top 3 candidates. I say all this to you so you can have a clear picture of how unjustly I was treated regarding this process. I know my worth, and for me not to get the opportunity to interview for the chief of police vacancy in the city of Bloomington is a complete travesty. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is James Bays, Ajit, and, I'm sorry, my glasses here, John Cannon.
Yeah, good evening. I'm just saying that I'm opposed to Park Pantry having a liquor license. But at the Liquor Commission meeting we was at, they went through, and they were going to add another thing at no alcohol sales, 24 ounce or under. I've found out today, while stopping at the Quick and Easy, now the single-serve cans are 25 ounce. And where's it going to stop? You know, it's like going to the store. You could buy a bottle of laundry detergent, 30 ounce. Well, then you go back a couple weeks later. Well, now it's 35 ounce. You know, new and improved. And I mean, it's the manufacturer's just going to keep upping the ounces in the bottles or whatever. I mean, if you guys do agree to grant the Park Pantry a liquor license, I mean, single serve. I mean, it's going to keep going one way or the other. I do believe that it needs to be specified that nothing less than a 6-pack and nothing less than 750 milliliters, which is just a little over 25 ounces, I do believe. And that's just my recommendations, because I did not even know that 24-ounce cans, what I used to know all the time, are now 25, and then some maybe even larger. That's all I have to say. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Ajit, John, and then Mike Sapp.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ajit Singh. I'm one of the principal of the Park Pantry. Reason I'm here today in front of you, I really appreciate the concern of all the neighbors, and it's changed us a lot. It's changed us a lot of our way how we are going to open the Park Pantry. I think right now we are not going to sell anything less than 24 ounce liquor or beer, whatever. So it's include pint, half pint, minis, everything. And I believe it's a good way to start. I own 3-4 stores in Bloomington, Decatur, Champaign area. I live in Plainfield, Illinois. And last meeting the question came, why don't, I'm outsider, so I want to tell you I have 2 sons. One of my son is in basketball team, so he don't want me to move anywhere. I love to move in this area. Every day I have to travel on most of my stores. All of my stores are 100% run by employees. So I think Park Pantry will generate 7 to 9 full-time and part-time employee if we'll open it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few, I have some layout if I think you have in file or not. I want to show to the council member.
I think you can, he can distribute those, correct? Yes, I believe you can distribute those. And then you can start at one end. Okay, thank you. John Canham?
Thank you very much.
Steve, thank you for your time. My name is John Canham. I'm a general manager at Prairie State Gaming. It's a video gaming terminal operator. And I represent 8 locations here in Bloomington. 4 of my owners are actually here tonight that own stores here, bars and restaurants. And I want to talk a little bit about the expansion of gaming that was recently passed by by Springfield. And I think there's a lot of concern that that's too much gaming. Well, the raw numbers are this. There are 30,000 video gaming terminals in Illinois, and we think the expansion is probably going to add another 2,000 to that number. It's about an 8% increase. It's not a huge increase. In terms of Bloomington itself, we think maybe half of locations may get a 6th machine. Obviously, that's on business needs. And when we add a 6th machine, that doesn't mean we have 5 now, that the number of machines is going to add 20% because we're adding a 6th machine. It's probably going to be about a 5% increase in revenue, we think. But it's going to enable our bars to compete with the surrounding municipalities. We know that Normal is going to allow a 6th machine. McLean will add a 6th machine. 10 machines in McLean because there's a truck stop there. So we really feel that if you restrict that 6th machine, it's going to put our locations at a competitive disadvantage. I mean, the first thing that Normal will do, those cafes over there that are all of out-of-state cafes, some of them are based somewhere else in the country, they're going to put a big banner up saying, we have 6 machines. And it's basically like having, maybe it's Baskin Robbins. They have 41 flavors, right? Well, we have 5 flavors right now. We want to add a 6th flavor. Doesn't mean it's going to be that huge increase in gaming. It's just something to compete and allow locations to prosper. The other thing I want to speak about is the moratorium you have on new gaming, and we really feel that's a barrier to entry for new bar owners in the city. We have 3 of our existing owners, and they're here today. They're opening new locations, but they cannot add the gaming. And like it or not, gaming is really part of the bar scene. If you don't have gaming, it's a real big takeaway. It's like having a donut shop with no coffee, right? You just can't. It doesn't happen. Everybody has gaming now. And if you restrict that piece, that makes it really hard for those guys to compete. 50% of new business is foul. And if you do not allow the gaming in those businesses, and we have one right now, Eric's 2, is a bar, it's open, the owner spent a lot of money on the renovation, and now it's been passed for gaming by the state, but because of the moratorium, he cannot have gaming now. And we think that's going to make it really hard for his business to thrive and prosper. So we're just trying to ask you to level the playing field. And remember, if an owner cannot sell his business and that new owner can't get the gaming, that makes it really hard for that owner to ever sell his business. So you're kind of locking him in forever if that's in that case. I've got 11 seconds left, I understand. I have lots to say on the subject. I'd love to sit around and talk to you personally if I have the opportunity. And I'd like to be a resource if you need any information on gaming in Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Sapp, and then Deborah Hawkins, and Serena Fish.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak. First of all, has everybody been into the hotspot, which this new convenience store is supposed to be resembling? So has everybody been to the hotspot? Here's pictures of the hotspot. Quite a bit of alcohol in the hotspot. The presentation that we were shown last week about the new building, there was not one picture of an alcohol aisle. There was not one picture of an alcohol refrigerator. It was all food. It was not one thing about alcohol. So apparently we don't need the alcohol. The neighborhood obviously doesn't want the alcohol. We welcome a convenience store. We don't want alcohol. We just found out that Parkview Inn can now sell packaged liquor. So I'm guessing with a liquor license, are they going to want video gaming at some point, which will not really make that family friendly. Going back to the park issues, the park closes at 10 o'clock. There's no reason you can't have alcohol at the park. So there's really no reason to be selling alcohol past 10 o'clock. Walgreens at South Main, they don't sell alcohol because of the neighborhood and because there's already alcohol being sold right across the street. Why can't they sell alcohol? That was another question. Everybody in favor of this has been a contractor. They don't live in the neighborhood. I live on the dead end where all this traffic is now being routed to. So when they come out of West Side Liquor or the new liquor store, they're going to go, they got either two ways to go, and I'm not saying that they're always going to go down the dead end, but that seems to be like it's going to be an issue now, if that's the only exit out of that building. And that was what I saw on their plans from last night, or the other day. Um, and I think that was about it. The tables and umbrellas, we weren't, when that was brought up last time, that was all a surprise to us. We're not sure where those are going to be set up and how that would work out. But, if they want to have ice cream and family, that's great, but I don't think we need the alcohol. So please, we don't want the alcohol. Convenience store, yes. Alcohol, no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Deborah Hawkins and Serena Fish.
Everybody, it's me again. To reiterate that I do not want the alcohol, the liquor license. Personally, as a homeowner, I do not want it. As the owner-operator of the business adjacent to the liquor store, I'm not even going over all the reasons why again, but I have a different thing that I want to ask you. No disrespect for anyone here or on the liquor commission or the thing is, we've heard over and over 40 plus years about this liquor store that people obviously did not want, did not invite it there, but they've lived with it, ongoing situations. Um, and I'm just wondering, was the city not aware of all the issues that we were dealing with because of the liquor in that area? I personally feel that somewhere along the line the ball got dropped. I don't know if it's because it's the west side or what the deal was. It's like that liquor store fell into the cracks. I'm sure that every person or establishment that holds a liquor license is under some type of scrutiny, some type of rules, some type of regulations, just as you have spoke about the pantry. So I'm just wondering, what kind of guarantee can the city council, the city of Bloomington, the liquor commissioner, any of you, give us to tell us that that won't happen again? Because obviously, something happened along the way in that area that all these things have been going on for years. And so I'm just afraid that if this happens again, that we're going to fall through the cracks. And I'm not saying that the city council and everyone doesn't care about the West End. I'm sure you do. But I don't feel that some of you feel as much about it as we do, the ones that live there. And so I'm just asking this question in all honesty. What happened? That Westside Liquor was this type of establishment, was allowed to go on and on and on for years with all these things happening. So that's about all I have to say, except for I know as the business owner also that that will hurt our business. A business that has been there for years, a business that has been a family business for years. And we have paid good tax dollars to the city and have tried to, do what we were supposed to do. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Serena Fish.
My positive thing for the night, they're fixing the sidewalks in front of my house. Thank you, Mr. Karsh. The rest of it is not so positive. As we've been dealing all along with this, things keep coming up that are like, well, we're going to add this. Like now they're talking about outdoor seating. There's plenty of outdoor seating across the street. They're talking about selling hot dogs or sandwiches or pizzas. Have any of you been to the new concession stand at Miller Park? I asked Jay today, Our Director of Public Parks and Recreations. The city is proposed, and they're about there. They just spent or in the process of spending $1.1 million to put in a new concession stand, new roof, and increase the parking. There's not even a reason to have food at this place, not to mention no alcohol. I don't know what it takes except for us as neighbors to beg you people. It's like, if they want to open a liquor store, fine. They've said themselves they can't do it without liquor. Great. Just go do it someplace else. We don't want it in our neighborhood. How hard is that to understand? Most all of our neighborhood are single-family homes. We all worked a long time to have that. We don't want it. I just talked to a few of the council people, 24-ounce liquor. Well, you go into some of the liquor stores today, I forgot which one, Circle K? No, whatever it was. Okay, now the small single serve is 25 ounces. So you'd have to change it to 25 ounces. All the people that got up and talked in favor of this establishment are contractors that took money from these people and are going to get more money for building this place. We don't want it in our neighborhoods. I still love you all, almost. Please, we're begging you. If they want to come for 6 months without the alcohol, we're happy to try. Otherwise, none of us are stepping in that place. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we're going to move on to our consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the City Council would like to have pulled from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Alderman Black.
7C, please. C as in cat.
7C as in cat. Black cat. Okay. Okay. Any other items? Is there a motion then to go ahead and pass the consent agenda as presented with the exception of item 7C as in cat? Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. I needed to turn to our distinguished clerk to point out a couple of things.
Thank you. On my minutes on page 5, there's copies here, and then it's been provided to everyone at council. On page 5, I just would like to strike one sentence. It's the second paragraph. No second was received. The motion failed on the floor. So with that being the correction, thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion, therefore, to pass the consent agenda, including the one sentence striking that's related to item 7A on the consent agenda, again, with the exception of item 7C?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Matthews. Is there a second? Second. Editor-in-Chief, there he goes again, by Councilmember Milawambwe. Any further discussion, comments? If everyone will go ahead and vote. Thank you. The motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Councilmember Black.
I'll answer to both. Thank you. So if I can invite Jim to come up here, if that would be okay, to talk a little bit about 7C. And while he's on the way up here, this has been a project that's been in the works for a very long time, nearly as long as I've been alive. And
20 minutes?
Some might say that.
Well, you got facial hair now.
That's right, I got a beard. It helps out a little bit. So this has been in the works for a while. I know that the last kind of conversation we've had about this was a couple months back. Since that point in time, we've had a new council come through, and I've heard some concerns from some folks about this project. So I guess I'd like to just ask Jim, what would be the harm in delaying 2 weeks to invite further public feedback about the Hamilton-Bunda Commerce project?
This particular item before you tonight is really just passing the motor fuel tax resolution, covering an agreement you passed as a council in January of 2019. That being said, It's really not a timing issue for tonight with this item. Yeah, August 12th is no harm, no foul. We are currently in phase one of this. Every construction project of this size is three phases. One, preliminary design. Two, the actual design. And phase three is where you do the construction. So we're finishing up in the next 30 days the actual first part of it, so we have the time to wait if that's desired by the council.
Gotcha. So if we were to delay, say, 2 weeks and invite public feedback on that, we could put it on the future agenda in 2 weeks, consent or otherwise, and take that feedback and apply it at that point in time?
That would be fine.
Okay.
And what is there, and especially with Jim, is there something particularly that we're going to get that we haven't gotten since you've been born?
This is a pretty large project. It's got a lot of money behind it, and I know that we've gone through a number of different processes with grants to try to fund this. Some of the feedback I'm getting is that people are concerned about this large of an expenditure if it's part of a mindset or approach from the past in which sprawl was a concern. I'm looking to just hear if people are still concerned about that. I know that there are other intersections in our community and other areas in our community that could be funded and maybe considered a higher priority. And I know that this being a group of 9 of us, that I might be the only one hearing that. So if that's the case, that's fine. But I'd like to give the opportunity to the public to weigh in on this project.
Thank you. Councilmember Carrillo.
Yeah, I am hearing very similar comments, and if there isn't a harm in delaying for 2 weeks, then I would be supportive of that so we can make some space for public input, especially because while I know that this has been in the works for a long time, it hasn't necessarily been something that we've been discussing at council meetings as of late, so it may have fallen off people's radars, and so I do want to get the opportunity to get some input.
Okay. Councilmember Bowman.
Well, like Jim said, it has been on the agenda recently. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess if I could fill in a little bit. To be fair, this has been, I started in 2000 at the city. It was an old project then. It has been through many different councils. You are correct, though, Alderman Carrillo, Councilmember Carrillo, that this is a newer one for our newly elected members. But in fairness, this has gone through multiple different resolutions. The council has provided support on it, and there have been public meetings. But again, of course, as an elected body, you have that authority. I would also say this is in line with the comprehensive plan. This does allow for infill, additional economic development. This does really complete a long-standing corridor of which the city has really expended tens of millions of dollars, and so it is a positive thing from transportation, economic development, and also multimodal. This also completes a multimodal corridor as well. So to be.
And I think that was part of what Connect Transit had mentioned, to go from Ward 2 to Ward 9, to Ward 8, not 9, sorry, in terms of an east-west corridor and then opening up other areas of economic development to the south. And that's what I think you're saying is consistent with infill rather than sprawl.
Correct. It is just good to clarify that. And then the last thing, if the council did vote in that direction, staff would appreciate additional direction on what that looked like. We want to make sure we would meet what the council would want should they choose to table it for additional conversation. But again.
Okay. So, Alderman Black, I'm guessing that's a motion. Oh, excuse me. Alderman, well, I saw you first, so I'm going to get you. Oh, Donna, you still had the floor. Oh, I apologize. Didn't realize you weren't done.
Of course, I live in Ward 2, but yes, this has been on the table for it's almost 30 years. And Ward 2, the sprawl is out there. And so the idea is, for this project, is to connect that small section so that industries can move in there and develop a tax base and grow the economy and bring in jobs. And that's why I'm in favor of moving forward. Yes, we could wait 2 weeks. I don't know how much more information we would get from that or feedback. I'm in favor of moving forward at this time.
Thank you. Alderman Craybill and then Matthew.
Jim, if you could talk about, I think during the process of this starting and going through, there was a planned, increased number of people. There were certain expectations about um, uh, uh, Fox Creek and that development, and that's really changed, right? We're not seeing the growth that we anticipated at one time. So why is it, I guess, still needed if there's growth? This is kind of a very general question.
Yeah, and this is, again, we're, off the cuff, let's have this as good dialogue. So, from the standpoint of this completes the major southern east-west corridor for this community. And so from a standpoint of the need from a traffic perspective, they do have traffic studies, even with the current volumes, as I recall. This is, again, not without going back and reviewing it. As I recall, it was about 15,000 vehicles would use this road within the first few years after it's open. And then again, the intent is not to necessarily replace Veterans Parkway. It is to provide another means of transportation, both by vehicles, Connect Transit, and also bikes and walking pedestrians on this portion of our community. So it really is a connectivity between the west side of Bloomington, east side, west side. It provides that southern connection across our community, which does open up economic development. I'd also like to add to that a safety component. There are significant safety concerns that IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation, and the city has expressed at the intersection of Rhodes Lane and Morrissey. As right now, that's where people currently have to use that, making a left turn onto that because of the proximity to the railroad, and then also the volume of Morrissey has been one of the significant benefits of this project.
And then just to clarify that, as I recall, I think the figure I remember was 23%. That could be wrong within a few points, but that would reduce the traffic on Veterans Parkway. I don't think it had much of anything to do with Fox Creek. I think it was much more, the connectivity and reducing the traffic on Veterans and providing in the south side of Bloomington more economic development. Is
That is
that
correct.
a fair statement?
Yes.
Councilmember Matthey, and then, did you have a?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad you brought up the safety part because that's where I was going to go. As somebody who has made the mistake of trying to cross that intersection at 4 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, it's bad, right? It's really bad. I finally gave up and turned right and went down and pulled a U-turn further down the road because I just couldn't turn left. There was no way to get across that intersection. So thank you for bringing up the safety part of it. Also,
Amy, was that a legal move that you made there?
absolutely.
Okay.
There was no U-turn sign right there,
Okay,
Scott.
perfect. Just checking, for the record.
Thank you for putting me on the spot with that one. I really appreciate you, buddy. The other thing I wanted to bring up too is we finally got the railroads to cooperate with this. They haven't for a very long time, is my understanding too, where we can have an at-grade crossing that intersection or the new proposal. They wanted us to build a tunnel, I think, at one point, which was going to be 30 million or something crazy like that, and then they wanted us to put a full overpass in there to get across that intersection. So they finally are letting us do an at-grade crossing there, and I think that finally lowered the price of this project down to the point where it's something that we could actually pull off and make happen. And then, there's also a significant economic development opportunity, thank you, Donna, that I was going to bring up too, because there's numerous empty buildings in that business park right now that could become prime spaces for new businesses to move into. We don't need to, more businesses building on Greenfield. We can reuse some of the existing business stock and get some more opportunities for businesses in that part of town, so.
Thank you. Councilmember Bolin.
Well, I would kind of add what I've said a little bit earlier is with that section, it was supposed to be expanded as part of the growth on the southwest side in order to stimulate economic development. And economic development has been stagnant there, and people do not want to locate there because of the connection and traveling. So I do think it's very important. And just to clarify, that section of Hamilton also serves two or three trailer parks. It's not just about the Den at Fox Creek. So there's a lot, and I think it also services Luther Oaks, and it services Wittenberg Woods. There's several subdivisions. It's not just, you know, Fox Creek where they dumped a lot of money into, okay?
My thanks to IS Director Scott Sprouse. He was able to pull up a Google map in the back and slap it up on the screen. Should we have any questions, I know this is on the fly, but what we're looking at, Hamilton Road, Bunn to Commerce. At Hamilton and Bunn, the road will curve up through here and connect up, hopefully at that grade. Just to clarify, we don't have the final agreement with the railroad. They have been open to it, which has not been happening in the past with the closure of two crossings that we've had a public meeting on. The intersection we've talked about of concern is Rhodes Lane and Morrissey right here. This is probably where Jamie was at. He probably turned in correctly and turned around right there. Yeah. Okay.
Any other, Alderman Black.
Yeah, so process question, I guess, for Jeff or George. If I were to make a motion to delay for 2 weeks and that were to fail, would it revert to the main motion on the floor? Another motion.
Or
Okay.
another motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we delay this for 2 weeks for additional public comment. Nothing formal, just through the aldermen to see if there's any public feedback on this topic.
You mean to the next meeting? Because I think the next meeting is
sorry.
3 weeks.
Whenever the next regular...
The next regular meeting.
August 12th.
August 12th.
August 12th. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion made by Councilmember Black, second by Councilmember Carrillo. Any further discussion? If everyone will go ahead and vote. I'm sorry.
Mayor, I was just going to say, I'll let you have the conversation, but I'm still going to vote for yes when it comes back, so.
Okay. So again, we're just voting on this to delay this until August 12th.
So the feedback will be public comments here?
Is that, what did you envision?
Nothing formal, just through aldermen and any feedback everybody has through their networks.
Okay. Okay, if everyone will go ahead and vote. Okay. The motion carries 6-3. There are 3 nays to announce, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Mwamwe, Councilmember Crable, and Councilmember Bray.
Okay. Thank you very much. We will move right along to item 8A, consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 7 of the City Code. I'm going to turn it over to Billy Tyus and Alderman Milawambwe.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, members of council. As you know, there's currently a moratorium in place until September 1st for new video gaming licenses. Currently, no establishment is eligible for a video gaming license unless it had video gaming terminals that were operational as of March 1st, 2018. There is one exception for fraternal organizations, but other than that, there are no new licenses. This amendment, if approved, would allow for a license if an establishment had video gaming terminals that were operational prior to March 1st of 2018, but ceased terminal operations temporarily due to the destruction and the reconstruction of an establishment. At this point, we know of one institution or one organization that would meet that criteria. We'd be happy to answer any questions if we can.
I'll move.
Thanks. Yeah, so cordial. Second.
Okay. Yeah.
Captain's chair?
Okay, you've got a motion and you've got a second. So I
Okay,
think we
good.
just vote now. Oh.
Okay, go ahead, vote. Okay. Yeah. Where do I vote? Run back to my seat? Oh, yeah, there we go. All right, got it.
And then you.
Show. Go to, not showing on display, showing on display. There we go, all right. We have cleared the results. Okay. So,
I can just call it if you want.
Oh,
revote.
yeah, why don't...
Okay, go ahead, vote again.
Oh, wow.
There you go, all right.
Whoa, you voted. Wow.
I voted.
I should just stay out more often. Okay.
It was a real touch and go there for
It was 8-0 or 10. You had me. You cast my vote. I'm not supposed to vote. I don't think that was a tie. Yeah, no. Yeah, okay. You know that it passed 9-0. There are no nays to announce. Okay. Okay. And we move, thank you, Alderman Millamboy. Item 8B, report of a classified non-union IMRF retirement as requested by the Human Resources Department. And again, this is a informational only as required by the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Tyus.
Thank you, sir. Again, as the mayor stated, this is for informational purposes only. The Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act, that's a mouthful, requires disclosure and discussion of certain wage increases if there's a possibility that they may have a pension impact. The retirement of Debbie Bohannon represents the 8th triggering event for this type of disclosure. Ms. Bohannon, as many of you probably know, is a longtime office manager in the Parks Department, and she's announced her retirement as of October 4th of this year. Her unused sick time and vacation payment would result in an accelerated payment for this payout that is expected to be just north of $63,000. As you know as well, recent agreements negotiated with some of our bargaining units were done in an effort and in partnership to lessen the impact of these types of payments. And so again, this is for informational purposes only. If the screen behind the mayor does disclose sort of the particulars of this issue. Be happy to answer any questions if we can.
If we could clarify also, this the accelerated payments don't mean that taxpayers or the city of Bloomington pays any more. It just means we have to pay more up front.
That's absolutely correct, and it should not also be seen as any type of penalty to the city of Decatur. Just as per the system, we're required to make this payment up front.
City of Bloomington.
City of Bloomington. Sorry, did I say Decatur? No. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Comments, thoughts? Again, this is just for information only. Okay. We move right along to item 8C, consideration and action on the application of Puma Enterprise Park Pantry located at 906 South Morris, requesting a Class PAS package sales, all types of alcohol, Sunday sales liquor license, which would allow the sale of premises of all types of packaged liquor for consumption off the premises 7 days a week. At this point, we have a brief overview by Mr. Tyus, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, Mayor, members of council, this item originally came before you on July 8th, and after some considerable conversation, you remanded it back to the Liquor Commission. Liquor Commission had a special meeting on July 16th, the minutes of which were included in your packet. After considerable discussion there as well, the commission is recommending approval of the license to this body with certain conditions. Those conditions being that the store would close at 11 p.m., that outdoor cameras and lighting be installed, that liquor sales be less than 50% of the total revenue, and the next two items are actually new and come as a result of that meeting. The first being that 6 months after the store opens, the Liquor Commission will access the store's sales receipts to ensure liquor sales are below 50% of total revenue, and that single-serve liquor of 24 ounces or less are prohibited. Again, this came before you originally on July 8th, and it is before you with a recommendation for approval by the Commission with certain conditions. We'd be happy to answer any questions if we can.
Council members. Councilmember Emig.
Thank you. I have a few comments that I've culled. Some I've received, many I've received actually in support of opening this convenience store, the Park Pantry, and they all come from people who live in the community. While I can empathize with those who don't want to open it, to a certain extent, I do not think it would be right to essentially prevent and punish all future establishments from operating a successful business on that lot due to the ill-run liquor store, which Westside was. Another comment. I happily welcome a new business to the neighborhood. I find that much more desirable than a vacant building. Of course, I hope the business caters to the needs of the neighborhood. I would love to be able to walk over and grab some milk or bread. And finally, I think that the solution proposed by the Liquor Commission is a good one that will both allow for a new local business and provide convenience to neighbors and those visiting the park. So I would argue that we will all be watching like hawks, and it would behoove this business to ensure that they are being responsive to the needs and demands of the community. But I also understand that for a business model to succeed, that they will need to provide the sale of alcohol as well as the food that they have promised, which looks a lot like the bodega I used to frequent often when I lived in Chicago. So thank you very much.
And Councilmember Carrillo.
So unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at the last council meeting where this was discussed, but last week I did attend the Liquor Commission hearing and listen to both the testimony from the representatives of Puma Enterprise and from the neighbors involved in this issue who have done a good job of getting their voices heard and of reaching out to members of this council. And I think while Mr. Singh strikes me as a really upstanding person and an upstanding businessman and a person who has a genuine desire to invest in our community, invest in the West Side, and contribute to it. And I also want to say that I really appreciate the time that he took to meet with myself and a group of the neighbors last week. I don't believe that they have successfully demonstrated that there is a need for this liquor license. And so in Section 4B, Chapter 6, Section 4B of the requirements for a liquor license, it says, quote, the City Council shall not create a new liquor license unless it has previously found that the creation of such license is necessary for the public convenience of residents of Bloomington and is in the best interest of the City of Bloomington. And so because that standard was not met for me, I will be voting against the liquor license and siding with the neighbors who have diligently expressed their issues and their concerns.
Okay. Thank you very much. Other members of the council? Councilmember Black.
Thank you. And these are tough issues, and I want to congratulate Jen on doing a really great job of engaging with the neighbors and talking with the business owners. That's the sort of thing that I think makes that dialogue better and allows for people to feel heard on both sides of this issue. These are tough decisions that we have to make, and I'm with Julie on this one, and she did a really good job and a much more eloquent way of arguing in favor of it than I could. So I'll defer to her comments and just add that I really think it's going to be imperative that when we do the 6-month review with the receipts, that we take a look at code enforcement violations and police violations at the same time. I want to understand the documented issues, and if there are issues, we're going to pull the liquor license, and no ifs, ands, or buts. The question was asked about what happened before. I can't speak to that, but what I can speak to is the future, and I take very, very seriously the fabric of our West Side neighborhoods, and I really buy into the idea that we can't let the sins of the past drive our future. So I'm willing to give Mr. Singh a shot, and if that is not, if the expectations are not met and the neighborhood deteriorates, we will pull the liquor license. It is literally that simple in my mind. And so I hope that the neighbors stay engaged and keep us honest on that front, because I'll be watching, the Liquor Commissioner will be watching, and we'll all be watching as well.
Just as a piece of information for everybody that understands, is that almost always we have the police chief or an assistant chief at a liquor commission meeting, and when we're whatever we're asking, we'll ask them their input or feedback or what they've calls for service or problems that they've responded. Councilmember Craybill.
I don't know if this is the appropriate place to ask questions.
This is it, so yeah.
Well, I mean, with regard to evidentiary, to gathering evidence, but just wondering, I know a resident asked why the hot spot was sold, and there's been a reference in something that I received that there was nothing but problems with the hot spot, and I don't know if I can get answers to those questions.
What I
go ahead. Go ahead. You go ahead if you want.
What I can share is just that from what I understand and from the conversations that we had with the neighbors and with Mr. Singh, is that he did own the hotspot for some period of time, but has sold it as of, I think, this year. And so the pictures that were shared, I don't know when they were taken, but they may or may not reflect the how the business looked when Mr. Singh owned and ran it. That's all I can contribute. I don't know if we can ask questions of Mr. Singh.
Yeah, we could ask questions of Mr. Boyle. Mr. Boyle, can you clarify the terms of operation and then the problems that we may have experienced with hotspots, at least from a legal standpoint?
Well, I guess it would be fair to say, Mr. Crayville was asking about evidence at this point, and I guess I could kind of quote from the minutes from the hotspot sales and say that the police themselves did not have concerns that they were raising with respect to the store. So, but I almost hesitate to go into too much one way or the other because, as you say, it's not necessarily an evidentiary hearing. When I hear there were a lot of problems, I don't know what that means in terms of the questions. I will say that, like I say, there were minutes that were released of the Liquor Commission meetings, and those are available. They're not going to be available to you tonight, but it's kind of difficult to supplement an entire record with something like that. I don't know if that's
I understand.
satisfactory, but
Thanks, George.
Thanks. Be handy, though.
I will say this, there was not a litany of calls for service that was linked to any kind of particular crime situation. I feel I could say that based on the minutes that were released last year.
Thank you, George.
So I attended the Special Liquor Commission meeting last week and heard a lot of people express their opinions both for and against this license. I know that it certainly appears that the residents closest to the liquor store are against the issuance of the license. I would note, though, that with regard to the petition for signatures, for instance, that were against the store, it was referred to as a liquor store, and there were no references to the restrictions. Of course, they were given out before the restrictions were proposed. And I understand the problems with the prior store that created significant problems. People have talked about reference to drunks, urination, trash, drug deals. With regard to the Parkview Inn, I see that kind of an opposite way. I see it as if they're selling packaged liquor and it's not a problem. I'm not sure I see how selling liquor across the street or catty corner would be an issue. Sounds like the Parkview Inn is well managed, and everything I've heard from Mr. Singh, that he will properly manage the new convenience store. No one's questioned his management skills, his experience, and he's going to bring a strong manager with him. He's also shown willingness to subject to numerous conditions. And I think the restrictions and good management should prevent many of the same problem, especially the limitation on single serve. I think the convenience store will potentially attract a different clientele. I note that Police Chief Donis said that extra lighting and camera should help with the concerns of the residents. Ultimately, we have someone wanting to invest a significant sum on the west side. We have concerns based on past experience, but it's speculation to say that those things will happen under better management and under a different kind of store. Overall, I see this as a benefit to the community, and I'll be voting yes.
Alderman, yeah.
I do want to point out, this is another thing I could tell you. We did not bring there's been no liquor violations brought against the hotspot. So that probably just behooves me to say that, since you had asked about history and any problems. The Liquor Commission has not brought any sanctions against
Just clarify, George, what you mean by, and what, you and I know
Well, if
what
there's a
that means.
violation of law on the premises, underage sale, particular things like that, we would bring it in, and we could bring an action against a particular licensee. And I'm referencing during the time that Mr. Singh owned the establishment, there were no violation hearings brought by the commission.
Okay. Thank you, George. Councilmember Matthey.
Actually,
you may
George,
not
if
want
you
to go
wanna
too
hang
far,
out.
George. Yeah.
So the Liquor Commission said that one of the restrictions they wanted was no single serve under 24 ounce, and public comment, we heard that there are multiple convenience stores now marketing 25 ounce. How do we deal with the definition of single serve if it keeps changing? Is there a way to say something along the lines of what a reasonable person would consider single serve, or do we limit it to say, I know that there are some things that are marketed as 4-packs now. That seems to be common with kind of alcohol energy drink type drinks. So do we say no single cans, or how do we deal with that issue now if the packaging is actually changing and 24 ounces is no longer single serve?
Well, first of all, in answer to your question about whether it should be a reasonable person standard or a measurement, I would urge a measurement because it's easier for enforcement people, whether they be police or whether they be store personnel even, in the initial kind of enforcing, your own rules or making sure that they comply with the rules. A measurement is a lot better than a reasonable person standard in terms of, a standard that can be enforced first at the store and then by officers and ultimately by the commissioner council, in dealing with that enforcement. Second of all, the single serves of, I myself have not heard of single serves of beer at 25 ounces, but, obviously there could also be 40 ounce, beers and so on. I will point out that a bottle of wine is, I think it's 25.3 ounces, 750 milliliters. And a 750, what used to be called a fifth, but it's of spirits, is 750 milliliters. So I guess that would be a question as to whether those are things that, that the council wanted to add. In this case, we were looking, I think the commission was looking at restricting, say, what might have been called tall boys or single servings of beer. Certainly airplane bottles and shots, things like that. So it could be something, that the council wants to do. I know our ordinance generally for years had been 40 ounces or less constitutes a single serve, but that would eliminate a lot of sales that would normally take place at a convenience store. So that was one of the reasons the commission chose 24 ounces.
The bottle of wine at 25.3 ounces, that was the reason. There's nothing magical about 24 ounces except that there's a lot of Bud Ice and Bud things that are 24 ounces.
Right.
But it was so that, like, if you wanted to stop and you were getting something for dinner and you wanted to grab a bottle of wine or two, you could sell a bottle of wine.
Right. It might be possible to say 40 ounces or less of beer and, under 750 milliliters of wine or spirits. You could do.
I'd be fine with that.
I mean, that's a possibility of it.
Okay. Then my next question, then, George, for you also was the Liquor Commission, and I didn't see it specified, talked about 50%. Was the 50% of gross sales, or was the 50% of receipts of what they had purchased? Because I know that the commission had talked about both of those things at one point, and I'm not sure which one's being brought forward.
The terms gross sales, revenues, gross revenues, I think the idea was of what they sold. And we talked about two ways of measuring that. One is from receipts, and the other that was urged by Commissioner Jordan was invoices. I don't think, once we have the standard, the ways of measuring them can be different, in terms of looking at, we can use different methods, to check it, but I think we were talking about gross revenues.
Okay, and my concern on that was with receipts is that margins are different on many different types of products, and figuring all that out and backing into what the proper number should be based on different varying margin levels is going to be a nightmare of paperwork. So,
well, that's why I think we're better off by saying gross rather than net.
Okay.
Obviously.
Okay. Thank you, George. I appreciate that. So I was actually thinking about what a convenience store of this sort would look like in my neighborhood, and then I realized there is one in my neighborhood. It's about a block away, the Franzetti's at the corner of Clinton and Washington Street, that I walk to on a regular basis to purchase things. And it's literally a convenience store. It's because I can walk over there and grab things and then walk back home and not drive to a grocery store. So, I lean towards, again, Julie said it very well, and Scott said it well, as good as well, that I'm willing to give them a shot, but also know that if anything, we're hearing anything from the neighbors, I am 100% in favor of pulling the license immediately as well. So I'm going to be voting yes on this as well. Thanks.
Councilmember Bolin and then Millawamboy.
I'm still conflicted. I need to drink. No. The reason I'm conflicted is there's through the testimony, a lot of different numbers have gone out, 30%, 40%, and then now 50% was, to me, a true convenience store might be 30% beer and wine. And apparently, Commissioner Jordan, is that his name, asked legal to come up with an ordinance that would differentiate between convenience stores that have gasoline versus that do not serve gas or sell gasoline. So I stopped at that Franzetti's just to see what it was like on the inside because they do not sell gasoline. And I did not see hard alcohol. I don't know if it's there or not. But they do sell beer and wine. They do sell hot dog buns, hamburger buns, toilet paper, paper towels, things that you might run out of and need. So that was very happy. I spoke to the owner, and he said he had a comfortable income from that store. I have a bit of a problem with the 50% because you could go in there and buy 2 packs of cigarettes and some cheap spirits, and it would be more than 50% alcohol, in my opinion, because cigarettes have gone up. I don't know, they're $10 a pack now, so that'd be $20 going in for cigarettes, and I don't know how much cheap liquor is, but probably less than that. So, I have these PowerPoint sheets that I've been looking at too, and the pictures don't show any alcohol from the ones that were submitted, so it's hard to tell how much alcohol would actually be in the store. And I'm just really conflicted.
If I could just clarify one thing, the 50%, I think, was just the Liquor Commission number. The projections, as I recall, George, is this correct, were 30%, which is, I think, what you had cited. 20 to 30%, and
That they could survive with 20 or 30% alcohol. They would be able to.
I think that's what they were projecting.
Right.
Right. So and I think I can't speak for the other liquor commissioners. I think some of it is because we've seen often, like month to month, some numbers will bounce around a little bit. I think that's where if you're not a liquor store, then it needs to be less than half. I think there's nothing magical about the 50.
Okay.
And that's not the business plan. It was just a number thrown out. Certainly, if somebody were to go above 50, that's more than a red flag. That's kind of a 3-alarm fire.
Right.
I guess. I don't know if that helps a little bit.
Okay. And
the council could lower that, right? I mean, or change that, or the same thing with the single serve.
Yeah, I would be more comfortable with instead of less than 50%, that it be at 40 or something like that. And then along the lines of the economic development, I am supportive of businesses, and I do want to give this business the benefit of the doubt. But liquor licenses are given out to be supportive and consistent with sound community planning. And that also, I'm conflicted with that because proliferation of liquor stores or giving out liquor licenses, um, I wonder how that contributes to economic development and quality of life in depressed neighborhoods. So I still don't know how I'm going to vote because of all these issues. I, I support the businessman. I support the neighbors. I don't live there. I would defer, of course, to the people that live on the west side, but I'm looking at um, not the whole community per se, but the philosophy of giving liquor licenses to businesses.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
all.
Councilmember Milwaukee.
Okay, thank you. Of course, this was a really tough decision because I drove by the neighborhood and took a look at the building. It's really not in very good condition, to say the least. Um, I, you know, like most of us have said here, I'm supportive of. I want to be supportive of a business person who wants to come in and invest in the neighborhood. Um, at the same time, I also like to listen to the wisdom of those who live in the area, because they are the ones who see it day by day. And I certainly would not pretend to understand the issues better than they do because I'm not there. And I'm always very careful about making decisions that uh, impact people in such a way because people have invested quite a bit of money in their properties, fixing, um, rehabbing, beautifying. So they do have a lot at stake in their property, and I certainly would not want to authorize something that they feel is going to impact them in a negative way. And as a way of, I do like the compromise of having, Mr. Singh give it a try, with the neighborhood for about 6 months, without a liquor license, and then to see if he's amenable to that and to see how this would work, because I think if people are not supportive of a business coming into that particular area, I don't think the business is going to do well. I think we want the neighborhood and the business to lift each other up, and not working against one another. So I think for that reason, at this moment, I would vote no.
Okay. And Councilmember Bray, and then if we have any, and then Councilmember Painter, but if we have more than that, obviously we've gone well beyond 5 minutes. That was listed. That probably was
Short.
unrealistic. Okay. Councilmember Bray and then Councilmember Painter.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for our attorney, George Boyle, and it's in relation to the hotspot while owned by Mr. Singh. Did the hotspot submit financials to document the ratio of food to alcohol that satisfied the criteria for the hotspot liquor license?
Well, we don't have criteria in our ordinance. In fact, this is something Councilman Bowen was talking about, and we don't have criteria that they were required to fulfill. And partly because of that, they didn't submit financials. They talked about financials, but they didn't submit any, nor were they asked to. When they were before Liquor Commission to approve at that time, they went before the commission twice to approve the sale.
Thank you. So then in follow-up to that, this particular application or some of the materials were received indicate that the business model is to replicate the business model of the hotspot, do we know how much the alcohol sales are overall at the hotspot? In other words, understand we might not have had a requirement of a ratio of food to alcohol, but do we know what those sales were? It's kind of a little bit of
No,
a
we do
different
not.
spin on that. Okay.
We don't. Now, I will say that there was testimony from Mr. Singh that said there had been some change in the display and in the amount of sales since he had sold it. That was based on his belief from talking to the current owner, he said. So that's, for what it's worth, that's what.
George, was the 30% number thrown around again? Again, my memory's bad, but I
Right.
just wanted to...
It was the 20 to
respond.
30% kind of number that was thrown around by I would say by Mr. Singh and the applicant.
And I believe, if I could just add to that, to your question, is that was the fairly typical threshold for convenience stores, because all but one convenience store in all of Bloomington Normal has a liquor license. And that's
There's no evidence in the record, nor am I aware, there's nothing in our ordinance, and I'm not really aware of what the threshold is for sales at a convenience store, sales of alcohol to other goods, as opposed to, say, a liquor store.
Thank you for that. As we look at the City of Bloomington, Chapter 6, Section 4B, Creation of New License and Findings, the Section B5 specifically states that we're to consider the location of the proposed establishment and the probable impact of a liquor establishment at that location upon the surrounding neighborhood or the city as a whole, giving particular consideration to, and there's certain things that are set out there that basically have to do with the operation of the business as well as the hours of the establishment and operating hours. We have a community of residents who've spoken to us about their experience, about what the impact is of a liquor establishment in an area that has quite a bit of density here from a residential standpoint. We're not talking about an industrial area. We're not talking about a commercial corridor here. We're talking about an area that abuts residences and homes. So in some respects, it's a curiosity that a liquor establishment was ever operating there, or a liquor license was ever given for a location of that nature to meet Section 4B, B5, an impact on the neighborhood. And then the second piece of that relates to the impact on the city as a whole. Well, this particular location is very close to our signature park, Miller Park, in which we've just invested significant amounts of money. And so I have a concern about what the impact would be on our Miller Park and all the activities there with a liquor establishment, again, so close of this type, so close, and what impact that has on the city as a whole. For these reasons, I'll be voting no.
Councilmember Painter.
I'll be voting no because Councilperson Carrillo is voting no. And this is not a citywide issue. This is an issue in her ward, and I will defer to her on this. Thank you.
Okay. Right. At this last word, Councilmember Carrillo.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we deny as presented.
Okay. This is a motion to deny. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Alderman Milawamwe. Okay, so we'll be voting now on the motion not to approve, a motion to deny. Okay.
So a yes vote is against the liquor.
So a yes vote is against.
The motion is to deny the application.
Right, so a yes vote is to deny the liquor license. Correct. Okay.
If that fails,
Then a new motion is impossible. Okay. The motion is approved 5-4, and there are 4 nays to announce, Madam Clerk, so that means that the liquor license is denied.
Councilmember Matthey, Councilmember Emig, Councilmember Black, Councilmember Crable.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn this over to our city manager's report, and finance director's report. Mr. Tyus.
Actually, I do not have comments tonight, but we do have our finance director here, Scott Rappin, to make his monthly report, monthly financial report. Scott.
Good evening. We'll be starting the process of kind of shifting gears with this presentation. I'm going to briefly go through 2019 one more time and then kind of just dip our toe in 2020 next month. As I indicated prior months.
Excuse me, we have a presentation. Excuse me, media and others, please. If you would go take that out in the hall. We have our finance director giving a presentation here, and it's really hard to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Scott. Thanks.
It takes 2 months to receive several of the major taxes, so July is kind of the first month we receive any taxes for 2020, so that's why I've been kind of going down the path of waiting until August, until we start reviewing 2020 presentation as we present with the major tax revenues, the income statement, the enterprise funds. So tonight, we'll kind of cruise through 2019, no material changes to announce, but there is some good news about 2020. We've got 1 to 2 months of revenue. So we've captured the revenue through July 15th, and so I'll finish up with kind of doing a rundown of where we stand in 2020 to date. This is the exact same exhibit as last month, so I just want to emphasize again that some of the takeaways, so if you look at the home rule and the state sales tax, those came in under budget, both categories, but that is partially offset by the local use tax. Recall that the voluntary remittance of internet sales tax, which is required now, that's where local use tax, it's paid through the local use tax category from the state. So you can see we ended $400,000 over budget, partially offsetting home rule and state sales tax deficits. For the income statement for the general fund, our surplus has actually increased by about $200,000 to $2.5 million from $2.3 last month. A review during the audit of all the open purchase orders, closed some POs, and so that's where that was realized. The takeaways here, as I said last month, revenues pretty much on target, $340,000 over budget, compared to $104 million, $105 million budget. That's pretty much on budget. Comp and contractuals, those are the main categories and the expenses that we came way under. As I mentioned last month, when you're having a difficult time filling those ranks in the staff, the contractual category is kind of reflective of that, where we have a lot of the training and things of that nature. Enterprise funds, no material changes here, emphasizing the revenue trend, 105% water, 99% sewer, so all the revenues came in really right on track except for golf. It was a difficult spring for golf, but we're kind of watching that category just to see trends, kind of in our culture and society as far as playing golfs. 2020. So as I mentioned, this is through July 15th, so this is not as of a particular month. Some of the revenues have just come in. So what I want to direct your attention to first is this column right here, prior year, year-to-date variance. So as you can see, we only have 2 categories, utility tax and hotel and motel, that are under prior year. So, sometimes with budgets, we can miss them. If you see variances over prior year, that's a pretty good indicator as to how we're doing as a city. Utility tax, this deficit right here, $43,000, it's all due to telecom. I've got some numbers here. Since 2016, when we put the utility tax increase into place, telecom has come down nearly $200,000 a year, the revenues from that. The Department of Revenue, this is not probably rocket science, but there's just this big migration from landlines to cell phones, VoIP, and they also say, the way the cell phones are packaging, data versus, the actual phone usage, that's removing some of those taxes from our revenue stream. Next, going to the 2020 budget variance column, you can see that home rule and state sales tax
over budget for the first month. We have 1 month. The reason that that's especially positive is we had 5 months, if you recall, 5 months of positive over budget in those two categories, or at least in home rule, the first part of last year, and then we had 7 months under budget. We adopted, or we pretty much locked in the 2020 budget before a lot of those months had come in. So our home rule sales tax budget for 2020 is over 2019, even though we were experiencing a downward trend. But you can see we came in slightly over $9,000 over budget for the first month, using our cyclical or seasonality adjusted monthly budgets that we use, and $17,000 over for state sales tax. Income tax was under, but we had a huge last month of 2019. The state had a huge month. That was big news. Replacement tax, which isn't on our list right now because this is the top 10, which is associated with state or income tax, is $275,000 over budget year to date. So that more than offsets the income tax. Food and beverage, I like to highlight this every time, $47,000 over. I think that's a good indication of the attitude out there in our community and the economy within our community. Local motor fuel tax, I should have highlighted this when I was talking about the prior year-to-date variance. You can see $212,000 in the prior year-to-date. Last year we were, you can see it's a 106% increase. So we just doubled the local motor fuel tax, so that completely reflects that doubling. $385,000 year-to-date budget for 2020, we hit $410. So we're ahead of budget, and you can see that it's right on track with doubling over the prior year. And then the last one I thought I'd highlight, the local use tax. It continues. I think there's a lot of realization that not realization. It's fact now that the state of Illinois has expanded that internet sales tax. Next year at this time, those facilitators, they're going to have to, and all online retailers are going to have to figure out a way to charge local taxes. So our home rule is going to be captured at that time. So I think we're just seeing a lot of activity that's coming in, that local use tax related to internet sales. So that's just hopefully a very positive indicator that what we've seen decreasing over prior years or holding steady in sales tax related to the brick and mortar and the internet purchases is going to come back to us with this expansion of the internet sales tax. And next month, as I mentioned, we'll be reviewing 2020 year-to-date through July, so we'll really jump into that. I'll only be talking about if there's any material changes over 2019. So as of right now, 2019, with the general fund, looks like a surplus, $2.5 million-ish right now.
Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Bowles.
How does the decrease in utility tax affect the pension funding? Because we use part of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does affect it. And I've talked about how we have a large surplus of restricted fund balance related to that utility tax. 2020 is the first year where we're dipping into the utility tax restricted fund balance. So the levy is not enough to cover the pensions for public safety. So we're using, I think it's around $300,000 of, it's a $4 to $5 million restricted fund balance. We're looking at 2023 to 2024, we'll be through that restricted fund balance. So the utility tax and the levy won't be enough to cover the pensions at that time. So that's a long answer to your question.
Yeah.
But yes, it affects it. I mean, $200,000 decrease. There's a calculation that we do that says, where was the line in 2016, that rate, and then everything above it is dedicated to the pensions. So what portion of that, I can't say it's exactly one for one, but yes, it affects.
Now, here's another question. Is there a plan to address that?
4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we should look to start addressing that now so that it doesn't hit us in the face in 4 years.
Yes, that I would assume will be part of the discussions as we go into the next budget
In the budget.
season, is looking forward.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Scott. And I'd just like to congratulate a member of our zoning board, Michael Rivera Jr., who went to his commissioning ceremony. He's the first lieutenant of the Army National Guard of Illinois, was just inducted on Friday. If you haven't met Michael, I would highly recommend getting to know him. And I'd also like to thank Alderwoman Painter for sweating profusely in helping the farmer's market the other day. I was out there and it was hotter than hell, and I looked over and Johnny's like working it away, throwing stuff in and fixing up stuff. So anyway, thank you for all that you were doing. You were doing stuff, that was for sure. Okay, any council members before we go into executive session, excuse me. Yes, Councilmember Carrillo.
I just wanted to say that today I've submitted an aldermanic request proposing the creation of a task force to explore the new legislation around cannabis and to make some recommendations for local implementation. That will be hopefully coming to a meeting soon, but I just wanted to put that bug in everybody's ear in case that's something that folks are interested in. And then the other thing is, last week we got some big news. And so I'm very interested in making space for residents and community members to come together and to share their opinions about how we move forward in light of the news about the State Farm building. And so I am going to be hosting a listening and strategy session here in this room on Friday, August 2nd from 5:30 to 7:30. And again, the meeting is open to the public and obviously open to all of my fellow council members and city staff. And I encourage people to help me spread the word about it so that we can get a good size audience to help us figure out where we go next.
Okay. Thank you. And just on that, there are many groups and others. We're all working without revealing any confidences. We're all still working toward trying to preserve the State Farm building downtown. So, Councilmember Bolin.
It's, the State Farm building is private property, and I know that the city can kind of talk and help to an extent, but if they want to demolish it, I suppose the only thing that you could do is just not give them a permit.
Well, actually, there are quite a few things we could talk about, but I'm happy to talk about, the points. But you're right, it is private property, so, ultimately the decision, it's their decision,
Completely changing topics. I just wanted to point out that this Saturday is hopefully the second of many, many Pride Fests for Bloomington that will be hosted in downtown Bloomington, so there will be at least one band and a DJ and all kinds of things going on. So come downtown and celebrate with us.
Thank you. And you can see me fall off a tricycle again. All right. Yeah, I fell off a tricycle last year. And it's Scott, he's still laughing about it. Look at that smirk, that millennial smirk.
At least you made it up the hill. I did not make it up the hill.
I did not make it totally up the hill. I fell just after the bistro. So, anyway, I haven't ridden a tricycle in I don't know how many years, so I'll use that as the excuse.
1 year is the answer.
Pardon me?
1 year.
Well, now it's 1 year. Okay. All right, at this point, I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. We will be coming out of executive session, but there will be nothing that we will be talking about. You are certainly welcome to stick around to hear us adjourn after that executive session. But at this point, is there a motion to go into executive session to discuss the personnel?
So moved.
Moved by, wow, okay. Councilmember Emick. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Bray. Okay, and at this point, if everyone will go ahead and vote, yes or no?
And just for the record, it's to discuss performance under personnel.
Discuss performance, thanks.